Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here with my June reading wrap-up. Now, June was the first full month of the Big Book Summer Challenge. That's a reading challenge that I host every summer. This is its 11th year. The idea is very simple, just to read bigger books during the summer. Many of us have either more time or more freedom, more vacation time during the summer. And this started many years ago when I was in two book groups that both took a break during the summer. So I decided to read some of the bigger books that had been collecting dust on my shelves. And the Big Book Summer Challenge was born. For the purposes of the challenge, a big book is simply any book with 400 or more pages. Any type, any genre, they all count. And you set your own goals, whether that's just reading one big book between May and September, or two, or however many you want. I personally like to devote my whole summer to bigger books and pull out a whole stack in May. So that's what I did this year. This was my stack. Of those, I chose what I like to start off Big Book Summer with something that's fast-paced. Kind of give me a good start, something that I know will be gripping and just pull me right in. Well, I made a very good choice. My first book for Big Book Summer was Billy Summers by Stephen King. And if you think Stephen King is only horror, you're in for a big surprise. This is not horror. It's not supernatural. It's been described as a thriller, but I found that there are some thriller elements, especially in like the last third of it. But much of this book, it is aptly titled because it is a character study about this man named Billy Summers. He is a hitman, and Billy has been offered a job with an enormous payday. Millions of dollars, bigger than he has ever made before, more than he has ever made before. It's offered by someone he's worked with before, a mobster out of Vegas. Though Billy feels like there's somebody else behind the scenes pulling the strings on this one. But he agrees to do the job, and in his mind, he has decided this is it. This is his last job. After this, he'll have plenty of money. He can retire for life, never have to do this again. So the setup for this unusual job is that Billy has to move to this small city in the South and live there for several months, establish himself as just a normal citizen. He's waiting for the target of this job to be extradited back to this state. He's currently in prison in California, but they're waiting for the extradition to go through because he's being tried for murder in this state where Billy is setting up his new home. And even though he's coming back to this state to be tried for murder, someone, whoever's pulling the strings behind the scenes, doesn't want this guy to see his day in court. So his handlers set Billy up in this city, small city, with a home in a fairly nice neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a neighborhood with small houses and small yards, but really nice neighbors. His cover story is that he's writing a novel and that he wasn't meeting his deadlines. So his agent has moved him to town so that he can focus solely on the writing. So they get him an office, which happens to have windows looking out over the courthouse. And Billy establishes this new life for himself under an assumed name, of course, living in the neighborhood, getting to know his neighbors, going to work every day in this office. He figures as long as he's pretending to be a writer, he might as well write. It's something he's always wanted to try, so he begins writing a memoir thinly veiled as a novel. So that creates a book within the book here. So there's the story of what's happening to Billy now as he establishes himself in this new place. And also, you're also getting what Billy's writing as he begins from childhood and is writing about his own life. It is a fascinating character study. You're rooting for the hitman almost from the first chapter. He seems like a decent guy who has had some really awful stuff happen to him in life. And then, as I said, toward the end of the book, the last third or so does get more thriller-like. There's a long road trip. He's on the run. There is plenty of action and suspense toward in the last half of the book. But it is, King writes about people so well. And he writes about children so well. And in part here, Billy's writing about his own childhood. It is completely engrossing from the very first pages. I couldn't put it down. I stayed up way too late almost every night reading this. Just thoroughly enjoyed Billy Summers by Stephen King and definitely recommend it. I also finished 2 audio big books during the month of June. The first of these was The House of Impossible Beauties by Joseph Cassara. This is a novel, although it's based, I found out after I finished it, it's based on some real life people. But it is a novel about a group of gay and transgender young people in New York City from the late 70s through the early 90s. And how each of them, the story kind of zeroes in on each of the main characters individually before they meet each other and their stories come together. Ultimately, it is a story of how each of these people who feels like they don't fit in finds their home and their found family within this group. It's a beautiful story. It is at times laugh aloud funny. It is also absolutely heartbreaking. It's gay and transgender people in New York in the 80s. So AIDS is a big part of the story. But also the lives that they have to lead just in order to be themselves. So there is, if you're offended by much of anything, then this probably isn't the book for you. There's, a lot of swearing, there's a lot of sex, there's violence, but it is ultimately the story of these people who felt like they didn't have a home, finding community, finding their home in their family. It's a beautifully written story. And as I said, I found out later it is based on some real life people from New York at that period of time. It was excellent on audio. The narrator really brought each of the characters alive. It was the perfect book to listen to for Pride Month. It's very moving and powerful. Really an excellent novel. That's The House of Impossible Beauties by Joseph Cassara. And although that was a big book, I was able to fit in one other small big book toward the end of the month. And that was The Strangers, Book 1 in the Greystone Secrets series by Margaret Peterson Haddix. So this is a middle grade novel. I am always a fan of Margaret Peterson Haddix's middle grade novels. They are excellent. As with many of her books, this one is science fiction. And the twist in it is just wonderful. I was fully immersed in this. So as this novel begins, there are three siblings living with their mom in Ohio. They are Chess, short for Rochester, Emma, and Finn. Chess is in 6th grade, Emma's in 4th grade, and Finn is just a second grader. And the three of them come home from school one day and see their mom watching TV. And what they see in the news is stunning, because the news is reporting that three siblings named Chess, Emma, and Finn have been kidnapped from their home in Arizona. And they can see their mother is really intrigued by this story, completely focused on it. As the newscaster goes on, they learn that these three siblings, who have their same names, also are their same ages and share their same birth dates. So that's the mystery at the beginning of this. The very next day, their mom abruptly leaves on a business trip, but the kids are really confused because she rarely travels for business. She's the only one caring for the kids, so she usually works from home. She's a graphic designer. And it's very unusual for her to travel for business, and especially without earlier notice. And the kids are left with a woman they don't know, but a friend of their mom's. She has a daughter in middle school who's just a little bit older than Chess. So the four kids begin to kind of investigate to find out what's going on with these other three kids who share their names and birth dates. Where did their mom go? And as they begin to investigate, they uncover some very big secrets. I loved this book. It was completely immersive, very gripping, as all of her novels are. And then I got to the twist, the kind of reveal as to what's going on, and I loved it even more. It's something I love to explore in a book. I'm not going to give away any secrets, no spoilers here, but I definitely recommend The Strangers by Margaret Peterson Haddix, book 1 in Greystone Secrets. And now I definitely want to go ahead and read book 2. So that was it for me in June. I only finished 3 books. They were big books, but I wanted to show you this is the main reason why I didn't finish more books, because I spent most of June reading this chunkster, 870 pages. Absolutely loved it. But I finished this in July, so I will talk about it in my July wrap-up. And since I only read 3 books in June, I thought I would also share with you what my husband finished in June, because he also participates in Big Book Summer. So he read 2 big books. The first one is one of my all-time favorite books. He read Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Murray. If you have never read this amazing novel, I highly recommend it. It is set in South Africa during apartheid. It features a wonderful and hilarious little girl named Robin, who unfortunately at the beginning of the book is orphaned. Both of her parents are killed. She goes to live with her aunt, who works as a flight attendant. Very unusual to be a career woman at that time. I think it's in the 60s that most of this takes place. So Robin's living with her aunt, but her aunt is traveling a lot of the time. So she hires a caretaker for Robin, a woman named Beauty. Beauty is a Black Xhosa woman who has come down from her mountain village into the city in order to find her own daughter, a teenager who has run away or been taken. She doesn't know. So she's in the city to look for her daughter. But meanwhile, she's not allowed to stay in the city without a job. So she gets a job caring for Robin. And so this is all about how these 2 lonely souls come together and kind of be each other's family. There's also mystery in it as Beauty is looking for her daughter. It is laugh out loud funny because Robin very often overhears things adults say and completely misunderstands. I was thrilled to see, I've been telling my husband to read this for years. It is in my top 10 books of all time. So I was thrilled that he finally decided to read it, and even more excited to hear him laughing out loud. And, you know, anytime he'd laugh while we were reading, I'd say, tell me where you are, what's happening? It's just a wonderful, wonderful book. Warm, moving, suspenseful, funny. It's got everything. And an amazing historical fiction as well. So highly recommend Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Murray. My husband's first big book of the summer. And next, he jumped into his biggest book of the summer, Matterhorn by Karl Marlantes. I was surprised that my husband chose this book. He picked it out in a bookstore that we were visiting. He doesn't read a lot of historical fiction. This is about the Vietnam War. He reads a lot of mystery, suspense, thriller. It's probably why I had so much trouble convincing him to read Hum If You Don't Know the Words, though he loved it. But he was interested in this. It's about 600 pages, definitely a big book. It is about the Vietnam War, so it focuses on a group of Marines during the Vietnam War. My husband said, of course, it's about the war, so it is fairly dark, disturbing. There are plenty of difficult topics in this book, but he said it was wonderful. I think this might be the 20th anniversary edition. It's been an acclaimed book for many years, and you know, he was really glad to have read it. He enjoyed it. So that's Matterhorn by Karl Marlantes, I think is how you say it. So those are the big books my husband read as well. I want to hear what you read in June. Let me know in the comments below. What was your favorite book read in June? As much as I enjoyed the 2 audiobooks, definitely Billy Summers was my favorite book read in June. But I was thrilled with all 3 of the books I read in June, all 3 of my first big books of the summer. Let me know what you read in June in the comments below.